If you're searching on how to make beef stew at home, I've got you covered. I'm showing you the classic way versus the slow cooker way that I make beef stew. Both yield delicious tender chunks of beef and vegetables in a thickened savory sauce that's perfect on top of crusty bread. The weather is getting colder and beef stew is another great way to stay warm and fed. To start, I'm working with 3.5 pounds of boneless beef chuck roast that I'm cutting into like 1 to 1.5 inch pieces. And I've preheated a pot. And I'm also going to be using some salt and pepper to add to my beef because I'm going to brown it very well. A lot of chefs, or it is advised to salt and season your meat while on the cutting board. I'm kind of doing it in the bowl. Okay, so my pot is preheated. I'm going to add several tablespoons of cooking oil. And now what I'm going to do is just create a single layer with space in between the pieces because this is going to give the best browning to the meat. If you crowd the pan or the pot, then it's just going to sort of turn gray, release its natural juices and kind of boil. But you really want to get a good brown crust on the pieces. So take your time doing this. I'm going to do this like in 3 or 4 batches. So I already salted and peppered one side of the meat, so I'm just going to go over with a little more salt and some cracked black pepper. Be sure to check the description below for the ingredient list and measurements. Okay, so I'm going to be placing all of my browned meat on a baking sheet. You could do this in another bowl. And I want you to see, this is what you're looking for. This deep golden brown crust on the exterior of the meat. This is browning the meat, and this is going to give you color and flavor to the beef stew. I'm going to be working with 1 large onion, 5 cloves of fresh garlic, and 1 celery stick. I'm just going to prep and chop that while I'm browning the meat. And this is what you end up with. And like I said, this was the first batch, and look at the beautiful deep brown coloring on the beef. And it also renders its own fat and juices and then kind of caramelizes and sticks to the bottom of the pan. You want that. That's the fond. So a little more cooking oil, and I'm just going to repeat the process. Like I said, take your time. This is not a quick process, but the little extra work you take to brown your meat will yield beautiful color and flavor to this beef stew. So I'm going to turn the pot down because I'm done browning the meat. And this is what it looks like. It smells amazing, and all I added was salt and pepper to the beef. Okay, so I've chopped my onion and celery going into the pot. I'm going to add just a little pinch of this flaky sea salt that I'm working with. Add it to the onions and celery and saute well until everything becomes aromatic and translucent. And once that happens, it's going to take a little time. I'm going to add my roughly chopped garlic, my 5 cloves of garlic. And the pot is just doing wonderous things. Okay, quick saute to the garlic, and I am going to add just a little more of my cooking oil. I'm actually working with avocado oil. You could do olive oil if you want, or veg oil. Okay, saute, and now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste right into the pot. And I'm going to cook that quickly for like a minute, just to sort of intensify the flavor of that. And now all of the meat goes right back into the pot. And it did just sort of rest and have juices on the pan. You want to add that too. And now I'm going to shake in 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. This is going to help thicken the beef stew sauce as it cooks. So I'm going to coat everything, combine, and cook that flour for about a minute or so, maybe 2 minutes. Okay, now I'm going to add 1.5 cups of a dry red wine right into the pot, and that's going to start to deglaze all of that fond, so you'll want to work this into the meat and veggies and sort of scrape up that fond. And you'll see that it's going to start to simmer. The alcohol will cook out throughout the entire cooking process, and it'll start to thicken. At this point, I'm going to add 4 cups of beef broth. You could add 5 cups. I only had 4 cups, and so I'm going to just add an extra cup of water. In total, 6 cups of liquid. And if you don't have red wine to add, just add more beef broth. Now I'm going to add some fresh aromatics like rosemary and some sprigs of thyme. I also have one dried bay leaf, and you could use dried thyme and rosemary in place of the fresh. It all works. I would say if you're using dried thyme and rosemary, like a half teaspoon to a full teaspoon goes in there. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a little mix, submerge those aromatics, and bring it to a boil. By the way, I am working with a 6-quart Dutch oven, and here it's starting to boil, so I'm going to cover with a lid. And at this point, I don't need the stovetop. I'm shutting it off, and I'm going to place this in a preheated oven of 325 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to let this cook for the first half for about an hour and a half at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. And so here I have 1.5 pounds of russet potatoes that I'm going to peel and cut, and here I have 2 large carrots. So at the halfway point, because it takes about 3 hours in the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm an hour and a half in, I'm going to remove the lid, and it smells amazing. This beef is not even tender, but I almost want to eat as is. Okay, give this a stir, and I'm actually going to start fishing out a lot of the stems and the bay leaf. I think they've done their job, so just kind of take that out. Okay, so at this point, you'll want to give this a taste. And if it needs a little extra salt, pepper, seasoning, add it. Salt and seasoning is to your preference, so I suggest you taste throughout and adjust. Okay, so I'm going to add my salt and pepper, and I'm just going to give that a little mix. And now I'm going to add my potatoes and carrots, and I cut them into large chunks. Now, if you're cutting them into like coin-sized carrots and small chunks of potatoes, maybe just add it in the last hour of cook time. Okay, so I'm going to give this a stir. I'm going to cover with a lid, and it goes right back into the oven to cook for another hour and a half. Like I stated earlier, the cook time is around 3 hours, or until everything is fork tender. So it has been another hour and a half, like I said, 3 hours total, and this is done. My husband's going to remove this. We are all so hungry, and you definitely can cook this on the stovetop. You'll just have to simmer at a constant, gentle simmer and make sure everything cooks through properly. Okay, so I can't tell you how I just want to dive into this, but I'm going to give this a stir. And I want you to see how tender everything is. I even actually left one potato whole. I don't even know why I did that. I didn't notice when I was filming, but it is cooked perfectly with the wooden spoon. Cuts right in half. It's so creamy and tender. This is one of the reasons why I love to use russet potatoes for beef stew. I love the creaminess and texture. And the sauce is just perfection. The meat is tender. I love it. Okay, so oven going on 450 degrees Fahrenheit because I am going to warm up and heat a baguette. And I like to just kind of wet my hands, they're clean, and just wet the exterior of the baguette and place it right onto the oven rack for about 5 minutes at 450 degrees or until the exterior is crusty and toasty. It's so good. I am going to garnish my beef stew with fresh chopped parsley. Sometimes I like to add peas into the mix. Sometimes I even like to add some fresh corn. I don't know. Make it hearty, make it yours. But this is so good. Okay, so my baguette is done, and check this out. Super toasty. And now I'm just going to serve a bowl with some of that baguette, and that is dinner. It's as simple as that. If you want a side salad, you could also serve this over rice. Sometimes my husband does that. It all works. It's so good. So at this point, you'll just break off a piece and dunk into that rich sauce. Now this next one is for my lazy cooks, or for those of you that want a no-fuss version of beef stew. Today, I'm going to show you guys how to make an easy beef stew in the crock pot. Now, I have made pot roast or beef stew where you brown the meat, but a lot of you have commented, a couple of you have sent me email messages where you want a beef stew recipe that's a bit easier, that skips the step where you brown the meat first. So this is the one. This is kind of like a dump and go crock pot beef stew. So here I'm working with about 2.5 to 3 pounds of beef chuck roast that I've already cut into like large chunks. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to use a clean hand and just work that in. I'm going to coat the meat. I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Remember the Worcestershire sauce, I know I'm probably saying it wrong. Worcestershire. It's salty, so you don't want to go too much with the salt here. Give that a mix. Cracked black pepper, like a 1/2 teaspoon. If you're using a fine ground pepper, then a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm also going to add like a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme. You really can add dried herbs to your preference. I'm just going to go with some dried thyme. Now I'm going to shake in 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and coat this meat. This is going to help thicken whatever rendered juices end up in the crock pot. Okay, nicely coated. There we go. I'm going to go over the other ingredients. Here I have 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of gold potatoes that I just semi-peeled, I rinsed, and I cut them into chunks. I have 3 medium to large carrots that I cut into chunks. Actually, I think this was more like 2, or was it 3? Yeah, 3 medium carrots, 3 cloves of garlic minced, and 2 celery sticks that I chopped. I rinsed, cleaned, chopped, and I even chopped in the celery leaves. I think that adds great flavor, very aromatic. And I'm also going to be adding the beefy onion soup mix that comes in a pack. Here I'm working with a 6-quart crock pot, and I'm going to add my meat. There we go. Just shake in whatever is. Okay, I'm going to just make sure that's all mixed and evenly on the bottom there. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to go in with my celery, just put that on top. Here I have my garlic going in, and my beefy onion soup dry mix. I love using this because it makes life easy. So this is why I didn't chop up any onions, because, you know, I have this. Just sprinkle that on top. Now going in with my potatoes and carrots. And that's that. I'm going to cover with a lid. I'm also going to be adding 1 dried bay leaf before I forget. This goes great with the other aromatics in this beef stew. So going into the crock pot. I'm going to quickly do this. When you lift the lid too much on your crock pot, it takes it longer. So I nestled it right in here. It takes it longer to come up to heat and to start cooking. So sorry. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so it's 3 hours into the cook time, and I want to give it a mix here and combine everything. It smells wonderful, but I want to, you can see how much liquid has accumulated in the crock pot. Oh, it smells good. With the thyme and the bay leaf and the celery and the garlic and the, okay. Quickly cover with the lid. And I'm just gonna let this continue cooking on a high heat. It's been about 3 hours, so maybe another hour and a half, I'll check it. Okay, so I have peas here. I would say this is like almost 2 cups of peas. I'm going to rinse these. Okay, so these are rinsed. Ooh, smells amazing. And it's foggy, sorry. So I'm gonna add my peas. This is already at 4 hours of cook time on high, and the meat is getting there, but I do want it to cook for another hour. But again, look at this. It's already forming like that gravy. And you know what? I'm gonna take out the bay leaf. I think it's done its job. So mix in the peas. Okay, 1 more hour. I'm gonna toast some bread in this cast iron skillet. Have a little bit of butter here. Well, it's more like like a tablespoon. And here I have some French bread. And I'm just gonna toast that. Make sure I get butter on both sides. There we go. Okay, so it has been 5 hours. And before I give it a stir, you see how some of the fat has pooled at the top? I'm just gonna skim that off. And this is done. I'm really trying not to get any, there we go. Okay, so this is nice and toasty. I'm gonna put one right there. Okay, so now I'm going to look at this. This is perfect. Everything is soft and tender. The meat just falls apart when you push on it. It's so good. The potatoes are soft and creamy, but they still hold a good texture, so it doesn't disintegrate by the time the meat gets soft. But this is so good. This is going to be so good. I have some chopped parsley. I'm going to do a little bit on top. There we go. Now I'm going to get a good scoop of this right on top of the bread. There we go. And this is dinner. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it. And thanks for watching.